This video is about processing plastics or polymers. Now, we know from a previous video where I was introducing plastics that they come in different types. So we've got the widest variety of plastics that come from the family of thermoplastics, which can be heated and reheated. There's also thermosets. Now, when we're talking about processing plastics, thermoplastics can be processed in many different ways, whereas thermosets are a lot more limited in terms of how you can process them and what you can actually produce. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about the different processes, but effectively polymer processing can be broken down into three broad areas. Now, the first area would be moulding processes, where you take the plastics, probably normally in a sort of a raw sort of form, like plastic pellets or powders, and these can be formed in moulds via heat to redistribute the plastic into different forms. The other main processing area is obviously the forming process. Now, in the terms of thermoplastics, they often come in sheet form for this, and then they can be again sort of manipulated and redistributed into different shapes from the standard stock sheet or rod, for example. And obviously there are joining processes, how to join one polymer or plastic to another. Now, from all of these processes, effectively, you could get questions in the exam about any of these processes. Now, I cannot emphasize enough how much you need to know these processes almost back to front. So I strongly recommend that after you've learnt the kind of names and the types of products that can be made with these processes, that you actually start researching and learning A, how to draw the process, B, how to annotate a diagram explaining the process, and obviously C, the actual process broken down into simple stages, because there are many questions in the exam papers that come up every year, and you need to know a whole range of these processes, obviously for metals and various other materials as well, but for plastics these are absolutely crucial. So if we're talking about thermoplastics and moulding processes, the general ones that you're going to need to know are injection moulding, blow moulding, rotational moulding, extrusion, and calendering. Now, moulding processes for thermosets, there is only one main process that you're going to need to know, and this is compression moulding. Okay. Now, if we move on to the forming processes, there are no forming processes for thermosets that you're going to have to talk about. Okay. However, for the forming of thermoplastics, you are going to need to have an understanding of vacuum forming, thermoforming, which is very similar, and line bending. And in terms of joining processes, there are many ways that you can join plastics together, but in terms of thermoplastics, you can obviously join these with screws, integral snap fixings, which is obviously processing the plastic in such a way that they can be snapped together, a bit like the two sides of a remote control, for example. Captive nuts, so actually using a nut that is formed around in the plastic forming process to actually hold it in place. Obviously the use of adhesives, and this applies to any sort of material. Thermal welding, so using heat to actually join the two plastics together, and ultrasonic welding as well, effectively kind of vibrating the plastics until they form heat and therefore can join together. In terms of thermosets, you're a lot more limited, because obviously you can't use heat to join these two types of plastics together, and you can't form captive nuts or fixings inside the plastic due to the limitations of compression moulding. However, you can join thermosets obviously by the use of screw fixings or adhesives. So these are the general sort of polymer processing techniques, and you're going to have, as I say, have a broad understanding of all of these to ensure that you kind of don't get caught out on the exams.